Senator Elizabeth Warren is campaigning tonight in Virginia, which will award 99 delegates in its primary on Super Tuesday, March 3rd, when 14 states will be voting. Senator Warren is currently third in the delegate total. The presidential campaign swerved into one of Elizabeth Warren's areas of expertise today as a former Harvard law professor specializing in bankruptcy law and the person who created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in President Barack Obama's administration. New York City's former Republican mayor, Michael Bloomberg, who is now running for president as a Democrat, has been forced to answer for statements that he has made in the past, including this statement in 2008, in which he explained the collapse of the housing market that left millions of homeowners around the country drowning in mortgages on homes that had lost their value.
Redlining, if you remember, was the term where banks took whole neighborhoods and said, people in these neighborhoods are poor, they're not going to be able to pay off their mortgages, tell them your salesmen don't go into those areas. And then Congress got involved, local elected officials as well, and said, oh, that's not fair, these people should be able to get credit. And once you started pushing in that direction, banks started making more and more loans where the credit of the person buying the house wasn't as good as you would like.
Joining us now from Arlington, Virginia, is Massachusetts Senator and Democratic presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren. Senator Warren, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And I want to get your reaction to what Mike Bloomberg just said there about the history of redlining.
Right. What the mayor is really saying is that this crisis could have been averted if the banks had just been able to discriminate against black and brown people more. Let's be clear. That would not have averted the crisis, and anybody who thinks that the banks should have been allowed to be more racist should not be the leader of our party.
Let me read to you what a Bloomberg campaign spokesperson has said about this specifically. This is what their statement says. Mike's saying that something bad, the financial crisis, followed something good, which is the fight against redlining he was part of as mayor, and Mike has detailed plans for how he will help 1 million more black families buy a house and counteract the effects of redlining and the subprime mortgage crisis as president. Your reaction to that, Senator?
He can try to scrub that video. He can try to scrub that video any way he wants. But it clearly says that, redlining was what helped protect the banks so the banks could make bigger profits. Look, let me tell you how I see this problem. This is the problem of a billionaire who thinks the way he's going to be elected is he's just going to go buy an election. I think the way that the Democrats ought to be picking their candidate is they ought to be doing it through the grassroots. And I think funding is a big part of this. When you can just reach in your own pocket and throw a few $100 million on the table and start buying your way to a nomination, it's a kind of different perspective than if you're doing it from the grassroots up. I believe in grassroots funding, and anybody who's listening to this who thinks that's how we ought to be funding campaigns, I hope they go to ElizabethWarren.com and just pitch in $5 to say that is the way that we should make our campaigns run. Be part of this. Volunteer an hour of phone banking. Go to a place near you. We're in 31 states now. But really, this is about democracy hanging in the balance. Are we going to be a country that you got to either be a billionaire or go suck up to the billionaires? Or are we going to be a country where we really do make our democracy work again and we fund these campaigns from the grassroots up? That's where I am. Join me.
Let me go to the more general question about these stories about people's backgrounds and positions they've held in the past and what should matter here. We all know, for example, that Barack Obama was against marriage equality before he then became in favor of marriage equality, that many politicians, certainly if they've been around long enough, have changed their positions in many ways. Bernie Sanders used to be much more supportive of the NRA's position on gun legislation than he is now. I think we're all confident that Bernie Sanders would be defying the NRA if he was in the presidency, and continues to defy the NRA now as a Vermont senator. So how much does it matter what is in a candidate's past? Isn't it more important what they're saying they will do as president?
Well, look, we can all say what we will do as president, but the question is, who's credible on that? And part of your credibility or lack of credibility is your record. Everybody brings their record along with them. Somebody who thinks that redlining was sure a good deal for the banks, to me, just kind of has the wrong perspective on the whole deal. Because understand this about redlining. What happened in America was that the federal government subsidized the purchase of housing because it helps build wealth. They did it for decades for white people, and they discriminated against black people, and it helped create a racial wealth gap that persists until this day. It's part of the reason that when I put together a housing plan, I know we need a lot more housing for all of America, and I want to build about 3 million housing units. But part of it directly addresses redlining and says people who live in formerly redlined areas can get a little bit of a leg up to be able to become homeowners. People who got cheated during the financial crisis when black and brown communities were targeted will get a little leg up because, look, it's about the role of government. Is government there to help the banks? Michael Bloomberg sure seems to think so. Or is government supposed to be on the side of the people? It's been on the side of the banks for way too long. I think it's time to switch over to a government on the side of the people.
Presidential candidate Senator Elizabeth Warren, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up, the next presidential debate will be on MSNBC next Wednesday. The candidates will be debating in Las Vegas, Nevada. The Nevada caucuses will be 3 days after the debate. Now, we saw how the debate in New Hampshire 4 days before the primary boosted Senator Amy Klobuchar to a third-place finish. The next debate will probably include former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. Who's going to get the debate boost this time, and who will be helped or hurt by Mike Bloomberg's participation in that debate? John Heilman and Maria Teresa Kumar will join us after this break.